Hi, I'm going to tell you all a story about a trip that I went to. I'm going to tell you about the time that I went to Alaska. Are you guys familiar with the sign Alaska? Well, they tend to sign this sign in Alaska, and I know we generally sign this for Alaska. But, we need to follow what they tend to sign. But I stayed there for about 4 weeks, and I'm just going to kind of summarize the story about what happened. I had my first encounter with bears when I went there. It was my first time ever seeing a bear. So, I finally arrived to the camp and the weather was crazy. It was very rainy and cold. So, I arrived to the camp. I decided I wanted to wait to, the weather calm down. So, I was hoping maybe by that night, I can get back to the camp and the weather will be better. So I decided to just go around and sightsee, see the different things they had in town. So as I was cruising along, I went to an area called the Pipeline. That's like in the center of town. So I was just driving along and I saw a bear come out of nowhere. It was a brown bear and I was kind of shocked. I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was my first time seeing a bear. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So, I was nervous. I really wanted to take a picture. Um, but I didn't want to get out the car. And I was like, okay, if I get out the car, maybe the bear will try to eat me. So I just kind of parked at an angle to where I can see the bear. And I let the window down. Yeah, it was an old car. And so I had to roll the window down. And by the time I got ready to take the picture, the bear had already left. So I missed the opportunity to take the picture. So, okay, I decided to go back to camp. And the weather was still crazy. The rain continued. Um, so I thought maybe I could sleep in the trunk of the car. So I got prepared and, got ready to go to sleep. And then I started to think about, the bear. I saw it not far from town. But I tried not to worry and focus on that. So in Alaska, in the summertime, it's bright, very bright, even when it's nighttime. So, I got in the trunk and it was warm. I went to sleep. So everything was perfect. I felt a little uncomfortable for a couple of hours, being in the trunk. But, I kind of tossed and turned and my seats let down. So, I had more room. But, it was strange because that was my first time ever sleeping in the trunk. So, okay, so after that, later on that day, I decided that I wanted to go um, like to the northern part of Alaska. Wow, it was so cold there. It was like 30 degrees. So there was a man. He asked me, did I want to go see the polar bears? And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I joined them in the ATV because, it was awkward. My car wouldn't be able to go up the mountains and all the twists and turns. So we finally arrived. And, we kind of waited and we looked. And I saw the polar bears, they were jumping and playing on the ice. So I thought that was really neat. So they had this one area where there was a lot of bones. And a lot of people in Alaska, they hunt. And what they do, they'll leave the meat there for the bears. So that way the bears won't come to town. They'll kind of keep them isolated in that area. So I was just walking around looking because it was interesting to me. So I walked up and was looking at the different bones, and the bones looked strange. They were like black and red, and the meat was gone, of course. But I was just kind of walking around, listening, looking at the area because there was a huge pile of bones. So I was just walking around looking, and they tapped me, and he was like, "You need to move because you need to run out of this area because you don't want to be there when the bears come. They may think you're their food." I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So I ended up leaving. I got an opportunity to see more bears as well, and I saw where the bears had ate a fox. The meat and stuff was gone, but the fur was still there. And I just, it was interesting but strange to me, since it was my first time seeing it. So we waited for about an hour, and then we were able to see more interaction with the bears. And the sun, it was like 1 in the morning, and the sun never went down. I mean, it's like it just moved around. It rotated, but it never went down. So it was like 2 in the morning, and we waited for the polar bears. It was more quiet out, so the polar bears were more active, and I got to see them interact with each other more. But oh my God, the weather was freezing cold. The temperature, like I said, was about 33, maybe 33 degrees. So it was freezing. And, I just only had like a little thin blanket. So the guy, he let me borrow his heavy jacket, like the Eskimo jacket with the fur coming over. And there's a suit that I can zip up. And it had like the pants. And it was heavy, but it kept me warm. So I was starting to have no feeling in my legs. And, and I had on like 3 pair of pants. And my feet were cold, but it still was freezing, even though I had on all those clothes. So it was like 6 or 7 miles back to town. So when we finally arrived to the place where I was staying, I could barely walk. It was very hard for me to walk. My legs went numb. So I was trying to be patient, and I was trying to walk. And we finally entered the building. And the man that I was staying with, they waited for me to make sure that I was okay. And I was like, I'm cold, I can't move. And he was an MET. So he told me what I needed to do. So he told me to get all the gear off. And I couldn't feel anything. I was that cold. So I went through my bag, and then I had an emergency blanket. So I had that, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to test and see if it works. So I got that, and I wrapped my legs up in that, and then they went and got me some water. So I had it to hydrate my body. So I drank a lot of water, and then the coldness and the numbness, maybe about 15 minutes, started to leave. My body finally started to warm up. So then I got in bed and went to sleep. I really didn't realize that, it was so hard being there in Alaska. And that's pretty much the story. What do you say? Yes, I mean, everything was frozen. I'm just curious. Did you guys understand the story of what was the challenge? Can you tell me why was it a challenge for you? Right, because you're not experiencing, you're not familiar with Alaska, so you don't know the area. So that's why the story may have been challenging, I understand.